Okay, I guess I'll have to just start over. Today is my 60th birthday. I've spent 6 decades on this planet, 60 times around the sun. Never in my life have I seen what I've seen over the last decade politically. Now, you all know me. I am politically right. I am a conservative. I am not a Republican. I actually belong to the Constitutional Party. That being said, I just watched a report of a gunfight in Portland between a single homeowner and several Antifa who were carrying long guns. He is in the hospital, the homeowner is in the hospital in critical condition. There's been one death, I believe was an Antifa. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and call her a protester. I think 2 other individuals were injured and went to ER. That being said, that's not the first time this has happened. It's not even the first time this has happened in Portland. Kyle Rittenhouse, Trayvon Martin, if you want to go all the way back, Hillary Clinton calling people who supported Trump a basket of deplorables, and that wasn't the first time she pissed all over literally half the country. I live in Northern California, and I remember when Trump was supposed to be at a rally in San Jose, and people were lined up to see him. I was not one of the people that was lined up to see him. I have to work, so, pardon me. Anyway, a bunch of people showed up, started throwing stones and pulling people out of the crowd and beating them, cornered a woman in a small alcove and beat the crap out of her. And the San Jose Police Department stood down, did not help those people in any way, shape, or form. That was the first time, pardon me, that was the first time politically I've ever been frightened for my country. And I'll tell you why. It's not because I supported Trump. At the time, I didn't know. I was not a supporter of Hillary, I can say that, with no doubts or reservations. However, that was the first time I've ever seen that kind of vitriol toward a group of people since the 60s. And even then, because I'm only 60 now, that was on TV. That was history. It wasn't happening in my neighborhoods. Not that I saw. This is not to say because I'm white or I didn't live in those neighborhoods. I did. But Rodney King, when the Rodney King verdicts came down and the police were found not guilty, I didn't think that was political. I thought that was people who had lost their way and who thought there's no way to get it back except through, beating people up, burning buildings. The problem is, if you want to do something like that, you don't do it in your own neighborhood. Your own neighborhood is not the problem. But they had valid points. This thing in San Jose with a Trump rally, there's no valid point there. I don't care what you think of the man. I honestly don't. I didn't like him much. He's just a bombastic guy. And I don't need that in my life. That's trauma or drama I don't need in my life. But to see people who don't know each other at all show up and start beating another group of people because they're standing in line to see a dude, and the police stand down and do nothing. First time I was scared for my country. Yes, I served. I was in the Air Force. That's not, I just mentioned that just so you know. I've been conservative for 40 years. So then basket of deplorables, then Russiagate, then as soon as he's elected at his inauguration, there are thousands of people there with these pink hats on, only to make noise, only to demonstrate. Demonstrate. I get that. That's a First Amendment thing. Do it politely. Do it peacefully. Don't call your neighbor names just to call your neighbor names, just because they don't agree with you. Because they don't agree with you doesn't mean they're bad. I don't agree with my partner half the time. And I love him. He's a very good friend. Donovan and I do not agree on a lot of things politically. It doesn't mean that we don't agree on a lot of things. It's important to make that distinction. I'm not going to beat the crap out of him because we don't agree on the Second Amendment, or we don't agree that the sky is blue. It doesn't mean anything until he brings a gun to the fight. Then it's a different story. The minute you bring violence to the fight, to the argument, you've lost the argument, in my opinion. The minute you bring violence to the argument, you've lost the argument. And there's no place to get back from there. You can't back away. You've already brought the fight. Once you bring the fight, nothing else matters. Now, here's something I keep seeing a lot of. There's going to be a civil war. There might very well be. What scares me is that if we actually go through with something like that in the next, let's say 2 or 3 years, which is a real possibility if Antifa and BLM and Proud Boys and all these other groups keep their shit up, China's going to walk in and take it all. Because there won't be any of us left to stop them. And that's what China wants anyway. The people I feel sorry for are the truckers in Canada who have done nothing wrong, nothing illegal in a peaceful protest. And Justin Trudeau went all Hitler on them and said, no. Started locking up bank accounts, taking vehicles, arresting people who've done nothing illegal. He had to start a War Powers Act, basically, before he could do it. But he did it, and then he wasted no time in taking money from these people, taking their vehicles, taking their livelihood, and then taking their lives by putting them in prison. Where are we going? Where do you think we're going? I think we're going down a rabbit hole we may not be able to get back out of. Now, do I agree with Antifa or BLM or Proud Boys or any of those guys? No, because their ideology is so specific it doesn't allow for a bigger picture. And when you ignore the bigger picture, you just repeat history. Now, World War II, the Japanese invaded Manchuria, which is Western China. Or Eastern China. I think it's Eastern China, sorry. Anyway, they invaded Manchuria. And this is 1930, 37 or 38, I think. And Americans actually went, maybe 39. The Americans actually went to help defend the Manchurians. Because China was just a big open sea of farmland. Manchuria was not very well populated at the time. And Japan just went through it like fire through a forest. They knew what they were doing. We had to back China because there was no way that we can allow Japan to have that much land, because that means resources. And we had to support China to keep Japan from getting all those resources. But Japan went through there like, no lie, like fire through a forest. They killed people left and right, willy-nilly, without thought, without reservation. And we couldn't allow that to happen. But we, as a nation, didn't do that. We, the people, did that. Went to work for China, flying old lightnings and old thunderbolts and those kind of things. So, and being on the ground right in the fighting. I don't think we really have that fighting spirit anymore. I don't think there's a bunch of people that want to support the United States in that way or another country altogether. Watching the pullout from Afghanistan hurt my heart. I know the men that were flying those planes out were in pain trying to get as many people on board as possible, knowing that they were overloading their planes, knowing that they needed that entire runway to get out of that area. Because I don't know if you know this about the Kabul or that area of Afghanistan, that airport, in order to get out of it, you have to circle up because it's a very narrow valley, bowl, basically, a bowl. And you have to circle up. So they need that entire runway to get enough speed to get to get lift. And they overload those planes anyway, knowing that there was a possibility they weren't going to get out. But they needed to make an effort. And they did it. And still, those people were hanging on the outside of those planes, not realizing, because they'd never been on a plane at all, not realizing that once they hit 2,000 feet, if they were able to hang on to the plane, they were going to die anyway. For lack of oxygen, cold, they were just going to get knocked off by the wind. They had no idea. And looked just like Saigon. Looked just like Saigon. I was 12, 13 when that happened. I watched that shit live. I never thought I'd have to watch that again. Never in my life. And then Afghanistan. We cannot afford a civil war. We cannot afford to fight each other every day. We cannot afford to faction the way we are breaking apart into cults, basically, or what do they call them? Political groups. We can't do that. We are not in a position. The United States is not in a position right now to do that. I get it. I truly do. I very much understand that. January 6th, no matter what you think, I will never call it an insurrection. And I'll tell you why. Because there were feds out there directing people, and the DC police opened the doors. Was there some fighting? Absolutely. Did people die? Yes. A veteran died of a police officer's bullet when he fired into a crowd. Did police officers die? Not that day, and not from injuries of that day either, as much as you might want to think differently. Not one police officer died from from injuries caused that day. Not one. Now, I'm losing my voice here, but I'm gonna try and finish up pretty quickly. We cannot afford a civil war. We have Russia on one side and China on the other, and they are huge. China is this close to our level of technology in the air and on the sea, which means it's going to be a push. And when I say a push, that would mean if everything else was equal, we had as many ships, we had as many men, we had as many planes, whatever. If all that was equal, it would decimate both countries. And this is still a real possibility. We have said we will support Taiwan. We've already sent several F-16s to Taiwan to support them in their effort to maintain their independence. China's really bent about that. They haven't said very much about it, but they know and they aren't happy. They made a deal with Russia just before the Olympics. Pardon me. And it's Axis and allies all over again. It is World War II all over again. This is the beginning. Mark my words, this is the beginning. I don't know who's going to fire the first shot that kills Ferdinand. I don't know. But I'm only 60, and I want to see 80. And I don't think I will. Not if we faction. Not if we can't keep it together long enough to survive the next, honestly, I'm going to say the next 15 or 20 years. Because China is very strong, technologically wise, and economically. Russia, not as economically strong, but they've got a very good military. Honestly, they're probably number 2 or number 3 in the world. I don't know how far ahead China is, because China stole tons of technology and built it. And they had issues with rockets, but now they got 1 up, and now they got 2 up, now they got 3 up. And now they're looking at hyper missiles, which go up and down. They're almost impossible to stop currently. And those missiles can carry nuclear warheads, which means they could devastate Denver, LA, San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Fort Lauderdale, Boston, in really short order. Are these the people we really want to forget about and focus on us? Because I think that's what's happening with our media. They're making us focus inward. When, if you're paying any attention to any world news, we really need to focus outward. We have a president that can barely walk. And I feel sorry for the man, I truly do. He should not have been pushed into service, because I think that's what the DNC did. I think they pushed him into service, knowing that he at the time, he was on the edge of forgetting things, and now he's in the middle of forgetting things. And his running mate is, I honestly don't have anything nice to say about her, so I'm just going to stop there. Nancy Pelosi's next in line after Kamala Harris. Nancy Pelosi's 86 or something like that. She's crazy old. She's older than Biden. And while she's got a pretty good grip on what she does day to day, I wouldn't want her in office. Hillary Clinton's dangerous. That's why I didn't vote for the first time. She's dangerous. Just flat dangerous. I don't trust her. Who's next in line after Nancy? I think it's Chuck Schumer, and then the turtle from Arkansas, or wherever the hell he's from, and then not Kennedy, the minority leader in the House. So we don't get to anybody that's young until we get to the minority leader of the House. And he's not young. I think he's my age, possibly a little bit younger than me. So where do we want to go? Because short of anything else, we could end up in a dictatorship. I don't have any doubt of that being a possibility. I think it would be very much like if something happens and going to war looks inevitable, I have absolutely no doubt the federal government will institute martial law and conscription into the military. Anybody under 24 will be just picked up and taken into the military, 18 to 24. Just picked up, and you're in the Army, you're in the Navy, you're in the Air Force, you're in the Marines. You don't get much choice, and everybody carries a gun. Is that what we want? That's not what I want. And the only way to keep us from getting there is to make sure that the United States stays strong. The only way that the United States stays strong is if we drop our minor disagreements and start working together to strengthen the United States, to help the Canadians strengthen Canada, to help Mexico strengthen Mexicans, or Mexicans strengthen Mexico. Because Venezuela is right down the border, or right down the river there. And they will side with Russia. Cuba's right off our border. They will side with Russia. Iran, Russia, and China are already making deals. These are things that we have to pay attention to, and we're not. And that's how we got here. We were not paying attention. When I was in, here, ding, 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 I'm going way back. When I was in junior high, we didn't get civics, we got history. They quit doing civics just before I got to junior high. In most schools, at least in California. Because civics taught you your rights. It also taught you politics. The rights of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights taught you all of that. And taught you local civics. We didn't get that. I don't know who did after my generation. They actually took home economics out of my high school my junior year. It was there for my sophomore year, but not my junior year. You couldn't take it again. They quit teaching driver's ed in high schools and farmed it out to companies. There are so many things that we didn't pay attention to, that we allowed to occur. We need to start paying attention. We need to speak our minds, but not scream at each other. Screaming at each other don't get us nowhere, except in trouble. And we have to find a way to dig ourselves out of this hole. Now, the old axiom is, hard men make for good times make for soft men make for bad times. I think we are in bad times, and I think hard men are the ones that need to be promoted now. Because they're the ones that are going to say, nope, can't play that game, we're just going to go do this. Frightening. It is frightening. But we don't have any choice anymore. Not with what I see on the horizon, not with what I've seen in my lifetime. From when I was a child, when I was a teenager. If you don't read history, you are doomed to repeat it. And we are on the cusp. And this time, we don't get our shit together, we are not coming out the same. We're not coming out the same on the other side. I think it'll be very much like The Man in the High Castle. If Russia and China can agree, I think it'll be very much like that. If I were you, I'd start learning Mandarin or Russian or both. If it comes down to it, I'm not hanging around. I'll fight every day, all day long, whatever it takes, until they take my life. I'm not going to wait for the Chinese to teach me Mandarin. I'm not going to wait for the Russians to teach me Russian. I'm not going to learn Farsi or Persian. I'm too old. I'm too tired. And I'll be too sad for the loss of my country. I don't have anything else to say. I think that's it. Thanks, guys.